So this is one of the more popular articles I've ever done. Apparently, called "Misconceptions of Price Gouging." If you're not aware, I have a weekly column over at beinglibertarian.com just called "Misconceptions." So every article's misconceptions of. I did one on the pink tax, individualism. I have one coming out on child labor this week, and I did one on price gouging, and they caught a lot of controversy, which did not surprise me in the least. And I was really interested to see what people had to say, both for and against. 522 reactions, 102 comments, and that's not including the replies to the comments. So I'm just going to go through the comments themselves and not the replies, and just kind of address the certain criticisms, certain arguments, because there's a lot of things, like a lot of criticisms I got when I did a video on this, that I was listening to it and I'm like, okay, some of this stuff I can't really rebut. Like someone brought up rationing. I'm like, well, I can't think of anything really wrong with that as long as it's done privately. Like, I don't want the government going in and rationing things, because I can't imagine they could do that to a benefit. But if you haven't already, if you want to read the article, I'll leave a link in the description if you want to know the context of what the article actually said. And I did a video on pretty much the same thing. I mean, little bits and pieces are different, but I'll leave a link to the video and version in the description if you want that. But basically, I agree price gouging is a good thing. Because when you raise prices, people buy only what they need, as opposed to if you keep prices low, the first person that gets to the store is going to buy everything of a scarce product, meaning the next person that gets there will buy as much as they can until we run out, and the next 10 people that get there don't have anything. And if you price gouge, you put in an automatic rationing system where, again, people buy only what they need, which means there's more for other people. And of course, to the people that can't afford it at all, that are completely poor, it's like, well, if prices are going up, that encourages them, that gives them a sign to say, hey, you should prepare in advance before bad stuff happens. Or, I mean, the amount of people that can't afford, a one-time thing, just enough stuff to survive 3 to 5 days, something like that, depending on how long it is. The amount of people that will not have any possible solution, or any possible fix out of this, I mean, that's what charity's for. And charity can certainly handle those few people. But, we'll go through the comments, because I've been reading them for the last few days, and they're very interesting. Very interesting. So the first one's just me saying, hey, thanks to the people that actually provided counter arguments and weren't just getting super emotional, because it is an emotional topic. We're talking about victims of a national disaster here, people suffering. First one, for all the people offended, it is ultimately your responsibility to prepare for disaster. Your local grocer is not responsible for your emergency water supply. I would up the price too. Good, yeah. I try not to make the moral argument, to just make the practical argument, because if I make the pure moral argument that, hey, it's the business's own property, they can do whatever they want, not too many people are going to, that kind of all goes out the window when we're talking about lives here. He does make a good point that I intentionally left out, because I didn't want to get, that seemed something for another time. That, yeah, in a sense, it's the local grocery stores owe you nothing. Now, I think you are allowed to react in a certain way. So, if you have the guy that, there's a disaster, he's part of the community, there's a disaster, and he does nothing to help anyone, is not kind in the slightest, and is, if anything, is even worse to the people, and, takes advantage of them, then it's yeah, you can remember that when everything's said and done, everything's back to normal. You can remember that when you're going to when you need something from his store, and you can just go somewhere else. Or when he needs something, that's just something, that's reciprocity there. That's social ostracism. You can say, okay, this guy, we need to remember that this guy did not help us at all and did not care for us in the slightest, so we're not going to care for him. All right, hopefully this loads. There we go. What kind of logic is that? Not everyone can afford to spend money on preparing. Items need to survive should be free, rationed, and paid out for a local disaster trust fund. Price gougers should be prosecuted. And of course, this guy is just you can see the emotion in the comment. This guy is just, when you start a comment with WTF, it's okay, you're not thinking rationally here. Yeah, not everyone can afford to spend money on preparing. No, false. When it comes to preparing, prepare a year in advance. I don't know. That's up to you. Prepare. If you're living paycheck to paycheck, and you know that you're living in an area where a hurricane might stop by within the next few years, and you're concerned about that, either get out and move to a better place, where move to a area with a lower price or cost of living, and do that, or just start preparing in advance. It's much easier to prepare when things are $1 in a store a year in advance. Water doesn't go bad. Certain canned foods don't go bad. I don't know if any canned food goes bad if you don't rust the can. But yeah, it's like you could like it's up to them. They have to prepare, and it's like I hate to be cold, but yeah, it's up to them. And when a disaster strikes, you hopefully, if you encourage people to prepare and you let people know prices are going to go up, like things are going to be scarce, hopefully most people will prepare. And the few people that don't prepare, I mean, it kind of is their own fault, but if they don't, like, charity can hopefully step in. The people that step in to provide stuff for free, like, hopefully they'll be able to funnel that towards those that can't afford it instead of those that can afford it but will go for the free stuff. But yeah, this is not an argument at all. Items needed to survive should be free, rationed, and paid out by a local disaster trust fund. That's not going to work. That's not going to work at all. So many toddlers in this thread, stomping their feet, screaming, "It's not fair. You don't have the right to dictate what a person does with their property, and that includes store owners who own supplies during emergencies. No one owes you anything. Grow up." I think it's very well said. Again, it's a moral argument which I agree with and purposely didn't include in the article because, again, when you're talking about people's lives, the best way to convince someone of something is to say, this is how it helps the people that are in trouble. Because that's the point of my article, is to say this is how it helps people in need. Like, price gouging actually helps those in need by dividing. It's kind of like an automatic rationing system. But, yeah, good point. I think it's a sound theory. If I had a if I had a garage full of bottled water and people were paying $10 a bottle, I'd think really carefully about how much I actually needed and how hard it would be to get more. If it's $2 a bottle, I'm just going to keep my garage door and my mouth shut. Yeah. Good points. Like, again, when you raise the price of something, you stimulate entrepreneurship. Like, if people are, like, let's say they're starving, there's no food, people are in a disaster area, it's possible to get in there, but it's life-threatening, very difficult to get supplies in there, and it's illegal to sell food for more than, like, a few bucks over, or more than 2 or 3 times the price. People are going to look at that, and they're going to say, well, it's not profitable, like, it's not beneficial, I'm not going to risk my life, I'm not going to risk all this time and effort and energy to go in and help these, help these people. Like, I want to help these people, but it's not worth it to me. And, like, that's fine. Like, I don't blame them for that. But if you allow price gouging, which the prices are up, I mean, if you ask someone, would you rather have no water at all or really expensive water? I'm sure they go with the really expensive water. And that's how this works. It's like, when you raise the cost, you're going to have a bunch of people that, we're just talking about incentives here. We're not talking about morality. We're just talking about incentives. People will be incentivized to bring supplies in there because they know they can make money off of it. It's a moot point anyway from a libertarian perspective that water is a store owner's personal property. She has every right to do whatever they want with their property. If I walked up to you the day before a hurricane and you were carrying a case of water, I say I wanted to buy it from you because I haven't prepared. It is now your choice to do what you do with your property. You can tell me $50. Either way, it is then my personal responsibility to decide if your property is worth that to me. It sucks that the poor do pay for this, but we can all prepare it just the same beforehand. That's a very good message. It's like, again, moral argument, which I agree with. But yeah, perfect point. We have fixed cost water. It comes out of the tap. Bottled water, on the other hand, is a luxury. A 5-gallon water container can be had for about $15. Though when demand rises, those too might be subject to higher prices. Fill them up and be comfortable knowing that you are prepared. Other things to stock up on while demand is low include hurricane lamps and plenty of lamp oil, a large 1500 watt inverter for your car to power a few essentials, or maybe a standby generator to power your whole house. With regards to food, consider getting a pressure canner. This will allow you to prepare and store food for long-term storage that doesn't require refrigeration. Also, as you eat your canned food, you can then use the empty jars for long-term storage of safe drinking water. While some of that free Bud water, I don't know what that is, might make it to you, don't count on it. That's what they do, what they're willing to, but ultimately it's up to the individual preparer. So I knew this argument wasn't really this comment wasn't really like an argument for or against, but I thought it was good information, like good information. I don't know why you would do like lamp oil on not just like a flashlight. I don't know if it's cheaper. Like, there has to be waterproof flashlights out there, I would think. But yeah, and especially like thinking water and canned food, it's like all you need is a can opener. Like, just buy a can opener, buy some canned food, and that stuff, that's not that hard to haul around. Like, say if you have to pack up and leave, it's like just load up a bunch in your car and go stay somewhere. I don't know. Like the necessities, the super necessities like food, water, and that are super cheap when there's not a disaster. And honestly, like I don't even know, like I use bottled water as the example because that's the example I always saw. That was the easiest to use as an example too. Like, it was just the easiest to make sense. But for some reason, it's like you can buy a water filter for like $15. So Just buy a water filter and filter out your tap water. I don't know. Not to mention all the bottles of water in surrounding areas can be purchased and moved into the area after the disaster is over faster, as people have a profit incentive. Anyone with a box truck who is moderately capitalized can easily bring in more supplies. Yeah, so like obviously like outside of a disaster area, stuff's going to cost nothing. And to bring it into the disaster area costs a certain amount of money, and it's going to be quite high if like the roads are down and damaged and there's like trees knocked over and all that. And so when you raise the price, you incentivize all that excess supplies to come into the disaster area where it's needed most. A little tip for you guys about water. Everyone has 20 to 55 gallons of drinkable water in their houses already stored and waiting. It's in your water heater. You just need a hose and empty jugs to fill. That way you don't have to worry about getting gouts for bottled water. I don't know how true that is, but that's interesting, if it is. Unfortunately, I have to disagree. I saw people buying a ridiculous amount of water the week Florence hit. I bought mine prior, but only enough for 5 people to go 3 days. I actually don't understand if he's arguing for or against. I don't get that. I don't think you read the article. When these events happen, why do people have to buy 6 cases of water, 4 loaves of bread? I mean, think about it. All you need is to make sure you have enough supplies for 3 days. People hoard all the things. And yeah, people panic too. It's like people are going to panic during a disaster no matter what. So I want people to panic the week before the disaster, when everything, or a month before the disaster, like as soon as they hear about it, when stuff is still cheap and stuff can still get in. And like, it's better than panicking and overbuying during the disaster. I read it, but I just wanted to see if it was relevant quick. My wife complained that our little dash hound was going under her bed to do his business. I solved the problem by putting 26 cases of water under the bed. I have gallons of city water stashed around for pet water and toilet flushing. I would not like to be involved in a last-minute fight for water at the store. That's a good comment. I stopped caring about price gouging when I saw how many people return water for a refund after a hurricane. Yeah, you never hear about that. That's interesting. I've never heard about that happening. Which I'm not saying it didn't happen. I'm just saying like it probably did happen. It's just like, I never really thought to look that up. From Paul Hopkins. I have $10 to buy a supply that normally costs $5. The price is now $20. I still only have the $10. My value of it did not change. The price of it did. Even if we say the value of the supply has increased, I still only have the $10. Even if my value of the supply still did change, I can't suddenly pay $20 for it when I still only have $10. Learn the math. Well, this is an unrealistic scenario, because this relies on, like, again, people not having that much money. Like, again, if you're living paycheck to paycheck, you have to pack up and leave. Like, honestly, there's not much more to it. You have to pack up, like, live in your car in a parking lot like 100 miles away if you have to. Like, find something to do. But he's referring to what I was saying about the subjective theory of value, which says that, like, water is actually valued at a different amount based on the circumstances and based on the person. Like, value itself is subjective, which is why we trade. We trade because value is subjective. If I value something and that you have, and you value something that I have, and we each value it more than what we already have, than the thing we own, then we can trade, and we will both gain wealth out of that. We will both gain value out of that because each of our subjective values for those two things we traded were different. But no, what he's saying is, like, yeah, when the price of water goes up during a disaster, the price goes up, but that's because the value of water also goes up. Like, again, what's water worth to me right now? Not that much. I have a water filter in my house. I've got a few water bottles in my fridge. Like, it's not really worth that much to me. Now, how much is a water bottle worth to someone on a desert island? Quite a lot more, because he does not have clean water. And that's the whole thing about the subjective theory of value, that the product itself is the same, but I value it a lot less than the guy on the desert island. So during a disaster, the value of water, the actual, what people value that bottle of water, goes up quite a bit, and the price then goes up to reflect that. This guy is saying, like, oh, I have $10, but now I can't pay for it because it's $20. It's like, that's just bad preparation on your part, man. Like, if you knew a hurricane was coming, or a tornado, or some kind of natural disaster, and you knew about it and you didn't prepare, you didn't stock up on, like, water of all things, like, that's on you. And the thing is, when prices are expensive, it's like, yeah, that punishes a lot of people that don't prepare. And honestly, most of those people can't afford it. Like, most of those people can't afford it. They might have to search, go into their like savings fund, or might have to like search under their couch or whatever. They might have to sell some stuff in their house to wealthy people. I don't know. But if it's really worth that much, you'll find a way. And if it's really worth that much, you'll do it ahead of time. But the point is that without price gouging, you're not going to get it anyway. Like, that's the point, that without price gouging, the first people to the store buy everything. They buy it all up as much as they can because they're panicking. They're worried about running out. Which means that if you're someone that's like broke and you happen to be the 10th person to the store, you're not going to get it whether there's price gouging or not. Or I'm sorry, you're not going to get it if there's a ban on price gouging. But if there is price gouging, it might still be there. You might not be able to afford it, but more people will get what they need because it's there to buy. Just limit the purchases. How exactly do you enforce? Okay, so this guy's talking about the rationing argument and actually arguing against rationing, which I thought he made a very good point. I did not think about that. How exactly do you enforce that? What stops a family splitting up and each buying the limit? What stops a customer queuing up twice? What motivates other suppliers to bring more of the product to the side of the storage? Or shortage. Yeah, that's actually a good point, because I don't want government doing like a mandatory rationing, because that's just going to fail miserably. Like every time they ration something, it just gets people killed. It's because usually what they're rationing is food or water or something important, and it ends up just getting people killed. So I'm totally against that. But yeah, he makes a good point about how if the private market enforces like their own rationing system, like the store says limit 5, which I've seen pictures of like stores will limit the amount you can buy during a disaster like that. What's to stop me from saying like, okay, from getting like 4 or 5 friends and saying like, okay, each of you go in and buy the max, or say I have a family of 4, I'm going to send each family member in one at a time. And even if you're like, okay, that's still like one person each. And even then, like, what's the point? What if I'm at a Walmart, for example? What's to stop me from going in, buying the max, going out to my car, putting it in my car, coming back in, going through a different checkout or going through a self-checkout like that? How do you enforce that? And then on top of that, what's to stop me from just going to a different store? Like, even if the individual store can find a way to stop me or to find a way to limit what I buy, the store can still, I can still just go to a different store. Yeah, rationing as a whole, like, I used to be like, because someone brought that up, I was like, that's a good argument. Like, I see nothing wrong with that. Like, and again, like, if a business wants to keep their prices low, like, fine. Like, if a business wants to keep their prices low, they can do whatever they want with their business. If they want, like, if they figure if we raise prices, that'll hurt the public's view of us, and we want that good karma, we want that good public image, and say we're, like, if we take a stand against price gouging and keep our prices low, like, you can do that. I don't know if it'll necessarily be best for the community, but hey, like, keep your prices low. And people will thank you for it. Most people, considering they don't understand like exactly why prices rise during a disaster, like you'll get some good public image out of that. So fine, like if you're a private company, sure. People need to be prepared for these situations. We live in a very unsafe, predictable world. We will live under a blanket of false sense of security, and the government takes our money, telling us that they're going to hand out security. But when the shit hits the fan, they're nowhere to be found. It's up to us, and it's always been up to us to take care of ourselves. People helping people, it's the American way. Government just stands in the way of that, so be prepared. Yeah, sure. Like, be prepared. Like, that's the thing. You don't have to go all out. Like, if you want to be a prepper, fine. But you don't have to go all out. You can at least just buy, like, the basics. Food and water. I mean, I have a bunch of canned food in my house. I have a bunch of water bottles in my house. That's not even to prepare. It's just I have it. The assumption is that people or family can afford the price gouge, but most can't because the money is not there. So with price gouging, the poor always lose. The running out argument is on the businesses not putting in an emergency order for water. These businesses do not care about the poor. They could easily ramp up production and have trucks to stores with enough stock to handle an emergency, but the greed of capitalism is hurting our country. Now that confuses me. That legitimately confuses me. Because you can tell this guy like has never run a business. Maybe he has and his business failed. But you can tell this guy's never run a business because it's like, okay, so I have a store during a natural disaster. Let's say there's price gouging laws in effect and I'm not allowed to do that. Still, for one, I want that positive public image. I want people to be like, hey, I got the supplies you need. Come here. Because if I keep that public image up, people are more likely to buy from me. People are more likely to remember that in the future after the disaster's over and might continue to buy from my store. Now, if people are going to start buying a lot of food and water, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to ship in a ton of food and water. I'm going to fill my warehouses. I'm going to fill my own house with as much supplies as I can if I know people are going to buy it, because that's just more money for me. And of course, let's say we have price gouging. Let's say we have price gouging in effect. I'm not just going to be like, well, prices are high, so I'm going to make the same amount of profit if I just keep the supply the same, or even if I just keep the supply the same, I'm going to make a ton of money. So I don't even have to worry about bringing in extra supply because, I mean, I'll make a ton of money anyway on the supply I already have. No, nobody thinks that way. No good business owner thinks that way. They're going to be like, okay, the price of this object is going to shoot up. I need to get in as much of it as I possibly can. I need to have as much in supply so when people come to buy it, I can sell it to them. Like this guy, I don't even know what this guy is. No, I'm quite confident the stores do that. The stores stock up or as much as they can before the storm because it's going to make them money. Like, why wouldn't they? The motivations behind businesses is very much relevant. Oh, this is referring to at the beginning of the article, I said it doesn't really matter. Like if the business is greedy or whatever, it's like, it honestly doesn't, because it's like all that matters in the end is whether or not this system helps people, meaning the victims of a disaster. All that matters is if it helps people or hurts people. That's really it. Like, that's all that matters, if it helps them or hurts them. So if it helps them and the business owners are greedy, it's like, I don't care. The people are being helped. Like, if the business owners are being super greedy and raising prices and this system helps people, okay, like, I don't care. You can be petty, you can complain, you can be like, screw poor people, screw the people in need. This person's making money and I don't like that. It's like, like, no, it doesn't matter. It is totally irrelevant. It's like, if someone is making profit off of me, fine. Fine, because that means I am buying something from them. I am doing something, I'm getting something from them in some way that they're also getting something from me. So it's like, sure, you want to make money off of me? If I get something in return and it's worthwhile for me, fine. Like, I could not care less. It's just, I don't like this method of thinking. It's like, oh, someone wants money, therefore we should ban whatever they're doing to make money. It's like, that is the stupidest way of thinking I've ever heard. This is why I'm stocked up for years. It can hit targets out of 1,000 yards. You fail to plan, suffer the consequences, and don't try to steal. I'm not in favor of raising prices in situations like this based on a personal level. If I owned a business, I wouldn't suddenly charge more. I'd probably limit the amount of something bought per customer. And sure, like, as a business owner, I would totally support that. Like, I mean, as this person being a business owner, I'm not a business owner. But if this person was a business owner, sure, like, fine. Like, I am all for that. Like, great, good, do it. I'm also not saying I'd stop a business from doing it on threat of being sued. I live in North Carolina, and it's illegal to raise prices certain things when a state of emergency is called. The best is people called out stores for price gouging, even though it was for things like bigger bottles of water that were normally priced due to being bigger. Yeah, that's the thing. Like, I've seen all these complaints, and it's like, oh my god, look at this case of water, it's so expensive. And it's like, yeah, that bottle of water is like $2. Like, each bottle of water in a 24 pack was like $2. And that's cheaper than certain places. Like, that's certainly cheaper than inside of an amusement park or something. I'm just going to let you read that one if you want. I love these comments. Like, I tell you, like, when people comment on my stuff just complaining and calling me an idiot, and then I get these surprisingly often, actually. Like, especially on YouTube. Like, people just find my video and you're like, wow, you're an idiot, you're a moron, you're a Nazi. I've been called a Nazi before already. All these stuff. I've been accused of being funded by Soros actually before, too. But when people say this stuff, it's just like, okay, this is the kind of person that I want to get mad. Like, this is the kind of person whose opinion I don't care about. Like, anyone that thinks it's a good idea to post this as a comment, I don't want their opinion. I don't care about their opinion. And if they get mad, all the better. Like, it's just, I am fine with them being mad. That makes me a masochist or a sadist? I don't know, but yeah, I'm fine with these people being mad. This is my favorite comment. I don't want to heart it because people get the wrong idea, but I would if I could. I will heart it in spirit. Few people ever seem to talk about the other side of price gouging, making money in anticipation of lost revenue during the disaster to cover bills, like the lease on your shop, taxes, etc. As a business owner, just because your customer base dries up, evacuates for instance, your rent and taxes are still due. Got to make up that money as best you can, so you raise prices to cover that gap in sales during the disaster. And yes, exactly. Like, that's something I didn't even think of when I wrote the article. That, like, yeah, these businesses are losing a lot of money and might actually risk shutting down during a disaster. And some people have said in response, like, they have insurance. Like, it's not going to cost them anything. They have insurance to pay for any damages. But no, you're missing it. Like, it's not just damages to the action. It's not physical damages. It's the fact that you're still paying property taxes, I imagine, on that. You still have to make a living. Like, you and your employees are still going to live. Like, you still have to pay for food and water and shelter. You still have taxes and bills to pay and all that. You still have to keep up your standard of living. And for every for every day that business shuts their doors, like, that's lost revenue to you. That's all this money that you could be making that you're no longer making. It's like if I buy a business and set up shop, or if I buy a building, set up shop there, start a business, and then shut it down for a week. It's like, I can't do that. That's all this lost money there. A few people I read this. Why is my mouse not working? If the argument was to limit supply by price, couldn't they just put a restriction on how many a person could buy in a transaction instead? Yes, that is a valid point. Though I did mention earlier, like, by the one commenter, how do you enforce that? Like, if you can find a way to enforce that, great. Like, honestly, I'm fine with that if you can find a way to enforce it, but I don't think you can. And enforce it meaning, like, not only do you somehow find a way to stop each person from buying the max or buying over the max at your own store, what stops someone from just going from A to B to C to D and just each station, each area that sells whatever they need and just buying up the max? I lived in a hurricane-prone area. I had a closet of 12 cases of water at all times. Cycle it for freshness, and you are never needed to rush to a grocer. Yeah. Maybe it has to do with getting supplies through a disaster area that causes the prices to be higher. Transportation costs very much affect price on the shelves. Yeah, it's like, it's a disaster area. Like, not only do, like, one of the reasons things I cannot talk. One of the reasons that, like, necessary things like this, the prices raise, is not only because the demand goes up, but because it's harder to supply that demand. It's harder to get more supply in. So if you do get supply in, like, the cost of transporting that is a lot more expensive. Please don't tell me you believe this crap. If you do, I have serious concerns for your mental health and what you believe in. Not an argument. Another person whose opinion is completely irrelevant. Because anyone who thinks it's a good idea to post something like this, like, I don't post comments much on forums. And when I do, I post. And even when I disagree with them, I'm like, yeah, you're wrong. And this is why. And at least I say this is why. Like, if I just say, yeah, like, oh my god, like, if I just throw out ad hominem attacks, it's like, or, because I don't do it. I never do it on stuff. It's like, if I were to just throw out ad hominem attack, I cannot talk. This is the third video in a row I'm recording right now, so I've been recording for about an hour. So I'm starting to slip over my words. But yeah, it's like anyone that posts something like this, it's like, I don't want your opinion, and I'm glad you're angry. Like, I'm glad you're on the opposite side of this as me. Not because they said they disagree with me, but because they're just like, please don't tell me you believe this crap. And it's like, okay, like, don't have an honest discussion. Be wrong. That's fine. Like, I might be wrong. For all I know, I might be wrong. But this isn't going to tell me I'm wrong. This is going to reinforce my point. It's like, okay, this person is probably wrong. And then they're on the opposite side of the argument as me, which means I'm probably right. Interesting thought, although I don't partake in the practice at my convenience stores, it just rubs me the wrong way. And it's like, fine, like, good. This guy owns a convenience store, and he's not going to price gouge. Good. Like, if anyone knows this guy, like, if anyone were to know this guy and live in the area, like, sure. Like, keep that in mind, that this guy won't do it. It's like, that's good. Rationing without price gouging can be achieved by putting a limit on quantity purchased in emergency disaster situations. Again, like, it goes back to the how do you enforce it, and I don't trust the government to enforce that because they're going to screw it up. A clear example of when libertarians are wrong. Signed, a real libertarian. And that one I actually did comment. I was waiting for someone to throw out the you're not a real libertarian instead of an actual counter argument. And I don't think he said anything in response. I'm pretty sure he didn't reply because I never got anything. Oh, he did actually say something, which again is not an argument. That's funny. There we go. Well, nah. I don't. I'm done with this. Has been locked. I'm done with just getting into comment fights. But yeah, another guy that it's like, there was no argument there. You never said why I was wrong, so I'm gonna assume I'm right. And it's like, if you did have an argument, I'm sure you would put it out there. So the fact that you're not putting it out there makes me think you don't have an argument. MFers prob out there calling the cops on the people who have water purifying equipment too because they don't have a water distribution permit. Yeah. Price gouging is never a good thing unless you are the one doing it or the one robbing them. Honestly, I don't get what the point of that is. I'm misunderstanding that comment. Or you could just limit the amount allowed to purchase, and people who can't afford higher prices don't have to suffer in the process. For people already living paycheck to paycheck, evacuating in a hurricane is already dangerous in that you have extra expenses and will likely be out of work for a while. Not even being able to enforce supplies, well, use your imagination. And it's like, yeah, again, like, how do you enforce the rationing thing? Now, this just did pop into my mind. Like, honestly, if I were a business owner, I would probably raise prices, not outrageously, like, I would, because I know that that's going to hurt, like, that's going to hurt the public view of my company, because people are going to, like, think I'm just price gouging and taking advantage of them. And it's like, certain people I could convince otherwise. It's like, no, I have to do this because I have to cover my costs here, and it's the only way I can get water to you is by paying a bunch of money. Or again, I keep using water as an example, but replace it with anything. In the article, I know I did food, I did shelter, like hotel rooms and stuff like that as an example. But honestly, what I would do is I'd probably, assuming I lived in a small community, which again, that's a big if. If I lived in a small community and I knew the people that definitely couldn't afford it, then I'd be like, yeah, if these people can't afford it, I would do some kind of thing. Like I mean, I'd have to put more thought into this if it was like a bigger city where I didn't know that many people, like some way to verify that you could not pay for this. Like, if there was some way to verify that these people like actually had nothing and couldn't afford it, then I might do some kind of thing and say like, yeah, if you meet these criteria, you can, I will give you a heavy discount on materials, because in that sense, like, everyone's happy. Like, that works out best. True, but if you price gouge high enough, the opportunity cost for stealing becomes more favorable, which, yes, is another argument that I heard someone bring up. Yeah, you're going to have more stealing. And I don't know if you would have or not, because on the one hand, like, why aren't people stealing when there is no price gouging? Well, it's because there's nothing to steal. Like, it's all gone. Nobody can go to a store and steal something because the store doesn't have any. But I would actually think stealing would go down, because again, like, my whole point to this is that the people that show up to the store later and later and later will still have supplies to buy. Will still have an opportunity to buy supplies because the people in the beginning did not, like, buy the whole store out of what they could, didn't fill their car up with supplies, which makes me think that if that's the case, that there would be fewer people without, or that because there would be fewer people without supplies, that there would be fewer people that would need to steal. I mean, sure, you have more resentment towards the company, probably. And thus that would encourage people to maybe, like, get angry enough to steal. I don't know. But I think that's, if anything, a side effect. Like, it's an unfortunate side effect, but it's still worth it in the end. Charging higher prices provides more incentive to bring in more water. If the prices can't go up, then I'm sorry, but why bother? The prices won't stay high forever and will probably come down rapidly once the reliable supply chain is established. But without that profit incentive, forget it. Say hello to government airdrops. Yes, exactly. One aspect this leaves out is the black market. While price-fixing laws allow people to buy more than they need, others stock up with the intent to resell at a higher price to those who are too late to buy any. We saw this happen in New Jersey and New York with gas after Hurricane Sandy. Hours-long waits for gasoline at normal prices, while some folks were driving around offering to resell gas as high as $50 a can. And yeah, that's something I never even thought of. That it's really hard to enforce price gouging laws on, like, people that are just driving around with supplies. So, like, I don't know why I wouldn't. But yeah, this is a very good point. Like, I don't know why people wouldn't go to a store, buy way more than, this is assuming there's laws against price gouging. I don't know why, like, people would go to the store, buy way more than they could ever possibly need, and then when the supply runs out at the store and everyone's, like, starving and wants supplies, go around and sell it for a high price, like, make a profit. Like, I'm sure people would do that. Again, I don't know if I'd do that. Actually, if anything, it's like, is that an immoral thing to do? Because, again, I don't know. But yeah, just talking about people being helped, it's like just talking about incentive structures. Yeah, people would do that. It is their property and can do as they wish. I do prepare, so it's pretty irrelevant to me. Raising the prices up is some is completely understandable too, but marketing things up 10 times to expressly enrich yourself from other people's suffering is a douchebag move. Have fun protecting your stock. When those people become violent, hope you stockpiled ammunition as well. And yeah, it's like the higher the price, the higher that you raise the price, the more you're going to the more you're going to anger the people around you. So it's like, yeah, there is like, if we're talking just in terms of incentives, like raise the price, and when people say like, dude, you're price gouging, maybe like, hey, I gotta raise the price, like I gotta make it's much more expensive to bring in the supplies, I gotta make a living. I'm gonna have to pay for all the money lost from the storm. And you can make all kinds of arguments for that, but of course, if your price is like, again, 1,000,000 times higher, just picking a hyperbolic number, then any excuse you can give pretty much vanishes. Look at all the offended snowflakes who don't understand free market capitalism. There are countries that don't have what they need to get by without a disaster, and you fools are bitching about pricing being raised during a disaster. Welcome to the most developed country in the world with the strongest economy. Supply and demand does not care about your feelings. If you don't like the free market move to a third world country, it's always a disaster there, and no one price gouges because there is no real economy or real money. Everyone is drinking polluted water and starving. When it isn't a disaster, things like bottled water are cheap here. That is literally just supply and demand. Yeah, literally just supply and demand, honestly. People buy only what they need. That's a lie. Look at how most people buy everything they can afford with cash, so they go on credit. America is consumer driven, so those with the credit and cash will outconsume the poor. This might be one libertarian position that I can't agree with. And yeah, that is something that like people might do. They might just take a credit card and go out and max out their credit card on supplies because they're like, who cares what it costs? I need this now. And that's an interesting point. Like, the only really solution I can think to that is, if I was a business owner, I would just say, like, if I can see that I don't even know, I would say maybe, like, cash or debit only kind of thing. Like, only if you're paying with a credit card, you can only buy a certain amount. I don't know how I'd do that. That is an interesting point, how people could just, like, with credit cards, they could just max out their credit card and pretty much you have the same issue again. But I would argue that it's still better because, again, like, people are going to do that anyway without price gouging laws. If any, they're just going to spend and spend. They're not going to care about the money. They're going to get as much as they can because they're only concerned about a disaster. Whereas if you raise the price, people might actually think about the price. Like, people might actually be more incentivized to think, like, with every extra piece of, like, supply I need, whatever the example is, bottled water or whatever, that's an extra $30, $40, $50, something like that. Greed is bad. The intent of the owners is everything. You usually talk of volunteerism, like corporations will do the right thing when something happens. If their intent is greed, that's not the right thing. This is why government has stepped in. This person is completely missing the point. If their intent is greed, that's not the right thing. Well, I mean, again, I hate people that attack greed because it's such a pointless term. It's like, what's greed? Like, if people do what's in their self-interest, which every single human being does all the time, always. Like, it's only bad when you're hurting other people. It's only bad when you're exploiting other people, I should say. But it's like, no, this person is focusing entirely on greed, and this person is more concerned with the perspective of the store owners than with the well-being of the poor people. That's how I see it. They don't care about the disaster victims. They care about whether or not the store owner is being greedy or not, which I think is dumb. That's just moronic. Another libertarian view is that there should also be no minimum wage. In a libertarian world, the rich own the earth, only they can afford food and water during a disaster, and that's fine because free world. Yeah, this guy's no idea anything about the world. I'm completely wrong. I don't even know where to start with that, but I would just say read an economics book. It is the store owner's choice what they charge. They should also consider the PR consequences. Yes. I've been saying that, I said that earlier in a few other comments. Eventually, the disaster will pass, and people will remember who helped and should support those businesses. The market can regulate industry much more effectively than the government. Yes, I agree. Apparently, I didn't like that, but I will. But yeah, exactly. Like, public relations is market forces. Agreed. Example, power failure for very large areas. Generators sell out. If the price stays the same, new ones will trickle in. If the price is allowed to go higher, more businesses will make the effort to ship them in. Also, if the price is low, I will buy 2 for my house. If the price is very high, I will buy just 1, leaving for my neighbors. He pretty much summarized my whole article right there. If it needs to be rationed, then ration it. The type of ration you're talking about is rations for the wealthy and none for the poor, which isn't the ethical thing to do during a disaster. I disagree. Like, again, like, I mean, we're talking about 3 to 5 days kind of thing here. Like, we're talking about, it's not the best. I mean, it's actually, I disagree. It is the best solution. We're saying, like, price gouging is not the perfect solution. Like, will some people suffer? Probably. Will some people not be able to afford it and possibly suffer? Yes, probably. Like, I don't deny that's going to happen. But the big question is, compared to what? Like, compared to what? Compared to rationing? Well, rationing seems to do, from what I can see about rationing does not do a good job of, ironically, rationing supplies. And, like, it's just compared to what? Like, name something better. Like, people bring up rationing, but I've yet to see an actual argument as to why rationing would work best. And this is after, of course, reading all the pages. Like, when someone brought up rationing, for the first person that brought up rationing to me when I did the video, I was like, I guess I see nothing wrong. I can't think of anything. And I spent about 6 to 8 hours. I mean, not constantly, but within a 6 to 8 hour period, I thought about it a few times, and I couldn't think of anything immediately wrong with it. But yeah, the biggest thing is just how would you enforce that across, like, would that nullify rationing if people could just head from store to store to store to store to store? But yeah, honestly, this argument, my article is mostly complaining about price gouging laws. So it's like, get rid of price gouging laws, and I think things will be better off. What the businesses do then, like, they'll figure it out. I think they'll figure it out. I think this guy posted earlier, didn't he? Another flawed, ignorant fairy tale point of view provided by the libertarians that will keep their party irrelevant for years to come. Again, oddly enough, he did not provide a counter argument, which makes me think he doesn't have one. He's just like, this view is this topic is too complicated for me to discuss, therefore I'll just post a comment. Just throwing out insults. And it's like honestly, that's the thing where if I read something I disagree with and I don't want to put the time into rebutting it, or I can't rebut it, I won't comment. I won't say anything. I'll just put it in the back of my mind for later. This is straight out false. Those that have the extra money buy more than they need and hoard it, or the rest cannot afford the new price and so are left to go without it. Well, if this happened, the worst case scenario, this will happen and things are exactly the same as they were with laws against price gouging. Because again, the first people to the store will buy everything out. So the only difference here is that the first people to the store buy everything out. Like, it's still the same thing. It's just the people with the most money buy everything out. Like, it's just, I don't see how my solution is any worse than any other solution currently. It's not the perfect solution, but it's better. Y'all complaining about prices going up when supplies become scarce, but have no issues with airports jacking prices 24/7 because customers can't leave the building. I don't know the context of that. I've never heard of that before. Again, not saying it didn't happen. I don't pay attention to that stuff, so I can't comment. Basic laws of supply and demand. Are we getting to the end of this? Yes, we are, because my throat is starting to get sore. Sorry this video is so long. Basic laws of supply and demand. When the demand increases, the supply will dwindle until you change prices to equalize the supply and demand again. Stupid. It's thoughts like this that... Yeah, this guy's right. Stupid. It's thoughts like this that justify violence. Everyone trying to survive, and we say you're too poor to survive. Again, it's back to the poverty thing. And it's just down to, like... Explain to me how this portion of the population will get things with laws against price gouging. Because again, with laws against price gouging, people just buy up everything as soon as they can with nothing left over for other people. So those people, maybe it's not the same people, but it's a larger portion of people that won't get the supplies they need. And then where's the complaint about that? Like, why aren't people complaining about that? It's like, I'm providing a solution. I think that a large enough portion of the population will be able to afford the giant increase in prices that that poor people will be able to get. The remaining few poor people will be able to get by with charity and other things. And think of it this way: like, if you want to think of this, this just came up into my head now. Think of it as altruism to raise prices. Think of it as welfare. Think of it as helping the poor when you raise prices to reflect the cost of goods. So if I price gouge, for example, if I have a business and I raise the prices, you know what I'm going to do with all that extra profit? I'm going to bring in more water so more people can buy it. I'm going to bring in more supplies so more people can buy more of my supplies, which will make me even more money. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to use the money that people are giving me, the extra money, to provide more stuff for the poor. And as I bring in more supplies, like, you know what happens as I bring in more supplies? The price goes down. Because more people get what they want, so the demand goes down and the supply goes up. So honestly, why didn't I put that in the article? I might add that. in later. Yeah, like that's just something that popped in my head. Yeah, like that's basically it. Like, how do you help the poor? Price gouge. The people that can't afford it, well, like, again, the business owner will, if they're allowed to price gouge for one, they're probably going to take out an investment. They're probably going to spend all kinds of money bringing in all this water. Again, just using water as an example, bringing in all these supplies, so that more people can afford them, and as more people get them, let's say everyone gets them, and then the price starts dropping, or most people get them, so the price starts dropping because there's a bunch left over, and not that many people looking for it. And the thing is, like, let's say that all the people that can afford water at an expensive price buy it. But now I'm left over with a bunch of water and a bunch of poor people that can't afford the price. It's in my best interest to lower the price, so now those people will buy them. It's like, that's how it works. Stupid. It's, oh, I already read that one. The guy that did not even, like, it's not a good argument. Misguided rationale. Having lived through a couple of different natural disasters in the States and abroad, the thing that I personally saw was increasing crime, especially theft and violence, as prices went up and product availability went down, causing further societal breakdown and an already severe crisis. Now, like, as for the crime thing, that's the thing where I really don't know if it would be better or worse. I can't tell. I mean, obviously it would go up in a disaster zone, but would it go up compared to laws against price gouging, or like a society with or without price gouging? Now, this guy said he's lived through natural disasters and he saw an increase in crime. Were there laws against price gouging when it happened? I don't know. Like, you're gonna have that when supplies are scarce. You're gonna have crime, and I'm hoping that this solution, by having more available resources, will prevent crime, because more people will get what they want and won't have to resort to stealing. Libertarianism, individual freedom, unless profits are at stake. Then F your liberty. This guy has no idea what libertarianism is. Like, there is no contradiction here. Freedom unless profits are, no, this is a leftist way of thinking. On the whole, freedom not to starve kind of thing. No. View more, oh my God, I'm halfway done. I thought I was almost done. I'm halfway done. I want to get through all these. Like, I like reading comments, and obviously not that many people are going to watch this video, if anyone does at all. But I still think it's worthwhile to go through I want to answer everyone's comment. I want to go through each and every one and make the case. More it's just an archive, honestly, just for me to say I did. And I believe this article or this video getting long, I would love to end it because my throat hurts because I've been talking for about an hour and a half here, and I'm talking loud. Because if I talk loud, then I can turn my mic gain down so the background noise goes down. So I'm kind of shouting right now. Ever pay $5 for a liter of Aquafina at a music festival? Yeah, like, again, when you're at a music festival, amusement park, all this stuff is crazy expensive because subjective theory of value. Then it should be free and everyone gets some. What the F is wrong with y'all? Clearly a guy that's never thought through a single serious thing in his life. Clearly a guy that's never actually put any actual thought into this argument. Poor people who are unprepared will be the first to die in any disaster. Good riddance. You are a tax burden on your society. That guy's a troll, I can tell. If we went back to the days only property owners could vote, so many problems would just evaporate. Same guy, he's a troll. I can tell. Here's a good anarchy ball meme that actually puts it out or explains it quite well. Come get your clean bottled water. $25 per case. That's outrageous. Across the street, it's only $4. Then why don't you go there? They don't have any left. Yeah, that's how that works. Working as a rationing lull, they are doing it to make big money. Okay. I don't care. Again, I do not care about the reasoning behind why these people are raising their prices. I only care about the outcome in this sense. That's the thing. Remember that when you're concerned about these people making big money, it's okay, so what you're saying is these people making you're more upset. Or if you had to choose between people making money and poor people starving, you think that people making money is the bigger evil? I don't get it. It's a moral argument that totally backfires on itself. Sometimes those doing the gouging are using the money to have more supplies delivered quickly. In the past, a guy bought generators and shipped them to a troubled area at great cost and got in trouble for selling them to reflect his costs instead of lost price. That's an interesting, big if true, basically. My God, some of you people need to take an economics class. The OP is spot on. Thank you, kind sir. Socialists have a visceral disdain for the natural ebb and flow of life. That is true, and if every time I interact with a socialist, I think this is true even more. Price gouging is the market's way of stabilizing itself during a disaster. Yes. And that's why people loot. Yeah, doesn't make it right. People loot because there are things to loot. In the way I have things planned out, people loot because there are things to loot. With a society that bans price gouging, there is nothing to loot because there is nothing. Simple solution, don't wait until the last minute. Stock up in advance. Yes. I'm going to go through these a bit quicker now. We should do the same thing with healthcare. The closer to death you are, the more it costs. Oh, wait. No. And then the looting starts. Again, I already addressed this. $42 for water or die negates an academic argument. No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't, honestly. When people say, this is a life and death issue, screw, logic, screw reason. No. That is when you need to be the most logical about things. That is when you need to take out all the emotion and just look at things rationally. What you can do, if we say take out all the emotion, we're not saying, we don't care if people die. What we're saying is we have a goal here, which is the least amount of suffering. We can all agree, every single one of us here can agree that the least amount of human suffering in this situation is ideal. Anything that brings about the least amount of human suffering is what we want. And that's what my argument is about. This is my argument for why price gouging would bring about the least amount of human suffering. And when people say it negates an academic argument, it's no, you just don't want to think. That doesn't mean, that just means you're angry or you're emotional and you don't want to put in the actual effort to think. And it's that's how people get hurt. That is, I can't think of the Mark Twain quote, but it's something something about, I'm totally butchering this, but yeah, he would rather live, he would rather be or suffer under the terrible person than suffer under the guy that's no, it's for your own good. You're suffering for, what I'm doing is for your own good, when it's actually hurting him. It's no, you have to think about this logically. I don't understand what's wrong about saying, okay, we want the least amount of human suffering. Now let's think about it. Let's really ration this out. See what's the best way of that happening. And yet people get mad at me for that. It's wow. Also, I'm really looking forward to part of me really hopes that 5 years from now, if I'm have enough of an influence that people write hit pieces on me, if they bring this back and they're oh my god, this guy thinks price gouging is good. I wait for that day. Not everyone has the money. That's the problem. Read the article. Just collect rainwater and grow food. Too easy. Okay, not so easy. I tried. Oh, I think he's referencing. Oh, I don't know what he was referencing. It's either hard to grow food, or maybe he's referencing the fact that in certain states it's illegal to collect rainwater. I think it's only one state, to be honest. But still, that's nuts. There's a pretty simple solution. If you don't like price gouging, don't support the businesses that do it. Learn how to capitalism. Yes. Spot on. Here's the price gouging. Oh, he's referencing someone else. That's still a utopian argument. What do you want me to say? Can you explain to me why it's a utopian argument? Huh? I don't get what you're trying to say here. Another guy referencing someone else. Higher prices are also an incentive to encourage businesses to find ways to increase the supply. Yes, as I explained earlier. That's what I'm always telling everyone. Yes, good. This isn't a topic under the header of economics or political ideology. This is a matter of ethics. See what I said earlier? About the person oh, this is all about ethics. It's you're not being a helpful person. You're not being helpful. What's happening here is someone is trying to say, this is how we fix things. This is my idea of how we fix things. I could be wrong. Give me your critiques. Tell me because the thing is, I don't care if I care about if I'm right, but I don't care if this article is right. I hope this article makes a good argument. And if I turn out to be wrong, if there's a better argument, the best way for me to learn is by writing an article and seeing what the comments say. And so far, I am not convinced. People have brought up some good counter arguments that had some logic to it that I think I rebutted quite well. Are you going to provide a counter argument here? That's the thing. I'm noticing this more and more. It's I wrote an article here, and it's you don't have to you're under no obligation to respond or anything. But it's if you're going to respond, at least put a little amount of effort into actually coming up with a counter argument, someone in the YouTube comments did when I put out the price gouging video. The person brought up a counter argument, and it's huh, that's an interesting counter argument. I'll have to think about it. And then I see stuff like this, and it's no. No. It's like you gotta actually come up with something here. Not to mention that high prices are like a big red flag to competitors to get the supply there quickly, which tends to cause prices to drop very fast due to oversupply. Yes, exactly. Get a few $100s worth of water before there's a crisis. Yes. Actually, I'm just thinking now that the guy that brought up the point about how all these people return water afterwards. So if they're buying water during a disaster and water's super expensive, then they overbuy. Let's say they overbuy, and then they have a bunch left over. And then the disaster ends and they go to return it. And the $55 pack of water they can now return for $2. That's a way to get people to prepare for the next disaster, because it's like, wow, that was a lot of wasted money. Yeah, that'll at least teach people like, hey, maybe you should prepare. Get a few $100s worth of water before there's a crisis. Honestly, you need like $10 worth of water. Like, people don't need that much water. Like, really, just a pack of water per person, and you'll survive for like 3 to 5 days. You'll probably survive like 2 weeks, honestly. Yes, because the wealthy don't already have enough. It's not a counter argument. It's just, it's nothing. You just want poor people dead. Yes, a good satire of the people in the comment section saying that thing. It's called extortion. I need context. Oh, come on. Stop. Yeah. Again, nothing, like, not an actual argument. Couldn't agree more. Basic Economics by Thomas Sowell, which I have yet to read, but it's like so high on my list. I will read that in the next few months for sure. Stupidest logic I've ever heard. Not as dumb as your logic, because, again, stupid logic, but you have yet to provide any. So I imagine that even if my logic is stupid, it's better than yours, because you have yet to provide any. I don't know what that means. Prepare and stop hating free trade. Yes. Price gouging, plain and simple. Thank you for identifying the topic of my article. Garbage, bullshit. You're mad, but you know it's... Yes, Colt Deming there. You're mad, but you know it's true. Perfect response to the top 2 comments up there. I kind of disagree with this one. That's okay, but can you tell me why? And again, like, this guy didn't, like, insult me or anything. This guy wasn't like, oh, that's dumb. He kind of disagrees. Like, okay, like, that's fine. Cool. Cool, whatever. I have nothing against that. Yeah, because people like me would see it as an opportunity to come in and buy all of it at the low government mandated price, then turn a profit on resale. Again, another regulation that is easily screwed over. Yeah. Pretty much so. We're at the end. Wow, that went on for an hour. Believe me, like, I don't like making the super long videos on, especially on topics like this, but and again, I'm fully aware that like 2 or 3 people will watch this, but it's more, honestly, it's more for me, even just to be able to say like, hey, like, I respond to comments, I respond to criticism. There's all kinds of comments, like, the only comments I essentially don't acknowledge at all are the ones that are just like, you're dumb. It's like, okay, I'm not even going to dignify that with an answer, like, you apparently don't have this, like, people that just randomly post insulting comments. It's like, okay, you apparently don't have anything better to do with your time than to post that, but I have better things to do with my time than comment. But yeah, let me know what you think in the comments. Like, I think this was a good one. I think like this was the what I like about writing articles and that. This is what I like about making the videos, because it generates a discussion. Like, there's really 2 goals to, like, making my videos and articles and that, and one is to convince people of the truth, and more to say, like, hey, this is, like, to correct falsehoods and like that, things that I know are false. Like, I know 100% are false, and I'm telling people this is false and here's why. Like, that's the one thing. Like, when someone puts out, like I just recorded a Kekistan video from Huffington Post of them, some crap journalist putting out something that is totally false. Like, you can tell the guy did absolutely zero research on any of it. And on that, I can be like, yeah, this is blatantly wrong. And, like, there's not even much of a discussion here. It's like, if you want to disagree with me, fine. Like, I'll engage in that, fine. But this is something that's so obviously wrong that there's not much to say. And then there are things like this, where this is a very complicated topic. This is a very complicated issue. Something that's really hard to, like, get the emotions out of at first. Like, people have called me cold-hearted for taking the emotion out of it. But it's like, I have to take the like, it's kind of the ethical thing, the moral thing to take the emotion out of it. Because people's lives are at stake here. Like, we're discussing how to react during a disaster. This is a very important thing that if you screw up, people get hurt. So it's like, the emotional part of me is what's making me take the emotion out of it, if that makes sense, to look at this rationally and say, okay, what's going on? And when it comes to things like this, like, there's so many people just poisoning the well, so many people that just say, like, ooh, I like this topic makes me uncomfortable, therefore you're a terrible person if you disagree with me. Like, those are the people that's ruining things. And it's like, I just want to have a discussion. And this, like, over 100 comments on this. This is great. This is what I like. I like the debate. I like the discussion. And every so often, I like the troll comments, or the people complaining and being obviously mad, because it's like, hey, again, like, this person clearly got angry from my article because they got super emotional and were just angry at me and think I'm a bad person. And it's like, okay, you're the kind of people I want to be angry. But, yeah, let me know what you think in the comments. Like the video if you enjoyed, subscribe for more, and thanks for watching.